As the Democratic presidential campaigns announced their fourth quarter fundraising numbers, another presidential hopeful was announced he's leaving the race.
That is right, and Team Rising is here to react. We've got Raul Alvilar, former national political director for the DNC, and Rachel Bovard, senior director of policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Great to see you both. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Let me start with you, Raul. So we're just getting the news, just moments ago, honestly, that Julian Castro is dropping out of the presidential race. Not entirely unexpected. He didn't make the last debate. He's been hanging out around 1% in the polls. It seems fundraising has been a bit of a challenge for him as well. But just react to the news, and what do you see him as having brought to this campaign?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The first thing is fundraising.
Right.
You have to be able to raise money to have longevity throughout the course of the election. It's sad to see him go. He was added a voice for the Latino community that might not be there as profoundly as if he was in the race himself. But I don't think that discounts him from further having a voice within the party and within the elections, and he'll be a president, I think, as well, but not as a presidential candidate. It's sad to see him go, but.
Rachel, he really made immigration reform and of his Hispanic identity really central to his campaign. What does, I think, the failure of his candidacy to sort of catch fire, does that say anything about those broader issues in our politics right now? Because so much of the issues we've been dealing with have been about those issues.
Yeah. I hope not, because immigration is something we need to keep talking about, and I don't think it's come up enough in the last couple of debates. We finally talked about it in the last debate, but it hadn't come up in the previous two. And so I do think this is an issue that needs to be raised. But I do think that Julian Castro, speaking for someone on the right, the one thing I remember the most about his candidacy is the first or second debate when he declared that men can have babies. And that was the bombshell, I think, for those on the right that was like, what? This is what you want to make a centerpiece of your campaign? And I think it goes back to this idea that sort of that social liberalism, I think, might be slightly still out of touch or out of step with the rest of America.
He definitely went in on some of the sort of woke signaling parts that don't always play well in every part of the country. But I want to give him a lot of credit, because on that issue of immigration, look, some of these candidates who have come and gone, they haven't really left an impact on the race, and all the other contenders say, oh, we were all shaped and changed. No, you weren't, right? Honestly, Kamala Harris didn't really raise one significant issue that changed the course of this race. Julian Castro did. When he called for decriminalizing the border, that was something that no other candidate had really fixated on, and he did change the conversation in the race and force some of the other progressive candidates to get on board with that. So he really did have an impact. I do think it's interesting, though, what Marshall is saying, which is that, look, immigration is just not the animating issue on the left that it is on the right. That's the reality, because you had Julian and you had Beto, who both tried to be like the border candidates, the candidates who are going to be focused on immigration. They were going to be the counterweight to President Trump on that. And it never really caught on in the imagination of the Democratic primary electorate.
Look, I think it to an extent, it is an important issue. We have to do something about immigration because we can't have, families separated at the border. We can't have children in cages. So that, I think, did get the Democratic base excited.
Sure.
and wanted and put immigration to the forefront. Again, back to Julian Castro.
But that energy is all just around, we got to get Trump out. Right? It's taken as a baseline that these candidates aren't going to be putting kids in cages in the same way as the Trump administration. I'm just saying, if you ask Democratic primary voters their issue preferences, immigration does not rate up there nearly as highly as those on the right.
Right.
Well, I'm wondering, if maybe some of this protection on immigration or not talking about it is because of Joe Biden to some extent, because he was complicit in a lot of the Obama-era immigration policies, which animated the left to some extent.
Very testy about it, too.
Yes, he is very testy about it. But 3 million families were deported, or 3 million individuals were deported. We know the Obama administration also put kids in cages because Democrats keep putting up pictures they think were from the Trump era, which actually were from 2014. Oh. But this is an issue that Joe Biden doesn't want to talk about, and to the extent that the establishment left has been protecting him, they've been protecting him a little bit on this issue.
What does this sort of mean for the future of the Democratic Party itself, right? Because we have a party where a lot of the more popular candidates are sort of towards the older end of the spectrum, right? You have Joe Biden, you have Elizabeth Warren, you have Bernie Sanders. Back in 2012, obviously, Julian Castro was a rising star. So I think that sort of that failure to transition to the next stage could possibly mean something.
Look, I think that it says a lot about the party, right? And I think that there's a couple of things that the party we're trying to do. I think one, we're got to beat Donald Trump, because if we don't, then who knows what's going to happen, right? And the second thing is, I think people are looking for someone that they can trust, because we haven't seen a president that we can trust in almost, 3 years, going on 4. And I also think that the party and people in general are looking for the other word, security. They're looking for somebody that's going to be able to provide that type of security, whether it's for income, whether it's for, getting good immigration policy done, whether it's raising minimum wages. Just 20 states just recently raised the minimum wage in their states. So where is Congress, and where are we at with that? So I think those are some of the feelings that people are feeling out there.
I think the other thing is, though, Rachel, that identity didn't play in this campaign the way that a lot of prognosticators thought it would and wanted it to. I mean, we're ending up with Bernie versus Biden. That's where this race is coming down to, if you believe most of the polls and solidity of their support. That certainly looks like what it's coming down to. And that really is an ideological battle. It's about this idea of restoration with Joe Biden. Let's go back to the way things were. Let's just get Trump out of here. He's an aberration. We can get back to the consensus that we were all comfortable with, we being people who are doing well under that consensus, versus Bernie Sanders, which is something very different. Ultimately, people haven't cared about their age. They haven't cared that they're white men. They care that these are the ideas and the ideology that they bring to the table.
Yeah, and it's true when you look at the African-American support for Joe Biden, too. I mean, identity hasn't mattered as much. And what's interesting, too, to the point that Marshall brought up about the young people, failing to latch on to Castro, the young people are failing to latch on to Pete Buttigieg, too. Right. To your point, they're going support for Bernie and for Biden. And there was an interesting article in Politico a couple of days ago that talked about how the young left absolutely hates Pete Buttigieg, and he's the youngest candidate on the stage.
Yeah, so it's not about identity. I mean, and look, Bernie Sanders, strongest candidate among Latino supporters, it wasn't Julian Castro, it was Bernie Sanders. And again, it's about the ideas and what you bring to the table rather than your personal
narrative. Which is a repudiation to some extent of what the woke left has been saying for a long time.
Yeah.
So for whatever that's worth.
All right, stick with us. We're going to have more with Team Rising right after this.